Landing your first interview guest can seem very daunting, especially if you're brand new to the world of podcasting. There are all kinds of questions you have in your head about whether people want to talk to you, who should you talk to, and why anyone would take time out of their day to sit and talk to you and be on your show, especially if you have very little or no social media presence prior to this and you're coming in as a total unknown. However, I want to encourage you to think about this slightly differently. Think of this as the first step in a long process of becoming a good interviewer, a good content creator, and a good host. And this process is really beautiful because what it will do is it will give you a set of skills for talking to different people, getting different kinds of things out of people, as well as a bunch of experiences and relationships with the people that you're talking to, all of which are going to last long after your time interviewing them, and even after you're done doing a show or being a podcast host, if you end up going on to do other things. And so we want to get this first guest out of the way because it seems like such a difficult thing to overcome. Like, how do I do my first interview? So that we can move on to greater and bigger and better things. Hi, my name is Alex Mershak. I am a podcaster myself. I've done over 100 interviews across 2 different shows, as well as interviews on other people's shows. And I started out as a college student sitting in my dorm with no name recognition, with no real social media presence. I had a small Twitter account at the time with, under 500 followers, I think, and was able to slowly build that up over time to do greater and greater interviews, interviewing people, professors, military strategists, other entrepreneurs, artists, all kinds of people that I've spoken to over the years. But I started in a very similar position to many of you who are watching. I'm also the CEO and founder of a company called Conviviality. And what Conviviality does is it uses AI to match podcast hosts with good guests to talk to. And so you could check out Conviviality if you're interested in getting a head start on finding guests and guest discovery. We have one of the best in class, in my opinion, AI platforms that we're in the middle of developing right now. And the reason I created this is because I knew as a host and as an interviewer, the difficulty and the time that it takes to find good guests. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to do that without this platform, just yourself in this interview. But if you find this helpful, then maybe you want to check out Conviviality after the video. So when you're first starting out, the question that everybody asks in the beginning is, how do I find people to talk to? Who do I talk to? How do I know that someone's going to want to talk to me? How do I approach talking to them? And so I'm going to give you 3 things in this video. I'm going to give you my step-by-step guide on how to get started, getting your first guest, getting your first couple of interviews down. I'm going to deal with the common misconceptions and objections that people have about finding people to interview and about doing interviews in the first place. And then I'm going to give you the exact framework that helped me get started again as a broke college student with no name recognition and a little microphone. I didn't even do my videos, my interviews over video when I first started. But I developed a methodology between my first show and my second show that actually helped me bootstrap my second show and get the second show started pretty quickly. And I landed a pretty big guest for my second show very early on, and that helped things quite a bit. So to get started, the first objection that everybody has is something like either I don't know who to talk to, or I don't have anyone in my network that would be worth talking to. Those are broadly the flavor of the initial objections that are going to come to your mind when you're first starting out. Who do I talk to? And, I don't have anyone to talk to. And those are kind of like the same thing, if you think about it. And to start, I would just implore you to consider all of the people that you already know. Now, this is a kind of trope of sorts. People say these kinds of things, but really, if you dig through your network, your personal, phone book, people, contacts, people that you interact with regularly on whatever social media platforms you're using. Again, a lot of this, I have to caveat this, all of this advice is going to depend on the kind of interview show that you're doing, what the topics are, what is the style of conversation. These things are going to be very different depending on who's watching and what your show is about. But this advice is going to apply broadly no matter what topic and what it is that you're doing, as long as you're doing the general interview format. So the first step is, of course, you should look at who you already know. And these could be friends, these could be family, these could be work colleagues. These could also, again, be people that you are involved with if you're in any kind of online community already, with people that are in the subject area that you're going to be talking about, whether that's true crime or comedy, or something more academic like archaeology. I mean, there's a show for every kind of area of expertise and interest these days. And so you could be doing anything. And it's likely that if you're already interested in a subject area and you're willing to go out of your way to make content about that subject, that you already know some people with some level of expertise or some level of entertainment value or swag or whatever it is that you're trying to optimize for, who you could go and talk to, right? Who you could ask to be on your show. And so the first step is start making a list. Start making a list of all the people that you already know, whether you've met them or you just know of them, or maybe you follow them, but they don't know who you are, who could potentially fit your niche, your subject area, because that list is going to be the beginning of basically what's the equivalent of a CRM for podcasting. And you're going to go through that list and you're going to use it as a reference point to begin starting to make your initial outreach. Now, the next thing I want to go through with you before we get to the actual outreach components, and I will get to the tactics and strategies and ways in which you can begin, again, getting those guests, is the objections that you have. Because the objections are actually the big thing that's going to hold you back or stop you from reaching out to that person who you think is kind of a long shot. You're not really sure if you can get them. You're nervous about it because you're worried about what they're going to say or what they're going to think if you ask them to do a show, or in some cases, you're not sure that you could give them a good enough conversation or facilitate a conversation that would be worth their time and your time as well. And so let's start picking apart some of those objections, because they're all basically psychological. They're all in your head and they're not really real. What I've found to be the case is that many of the interviews that I was the most nervous about either doing or asking for end up being some of my best interviews. And often I end up having really good relationships with those people afterward. And so the more that you do this, the more you'll see that a lot of your objections are actually just self-created fears in your own head that are stopping you from moving forward with the kind of shows that you should be doing. So let's address the first objection, right? Which is, why would anyone want to talk to me? And I really love this one because it's a very simple thing, but on some level, the answer kind of unlocks a bunch of other things for you. And what I mean by that is, when you think about this question, what you're really saying is, I don't think that I'm adding value. That's really what you're saying. What you're saying is, I don't think that someone taking time out of their day to go and talk to me will be valuable to them. And this could be nothing further from the truth. There could be nothing further from the truth. I mean, the coolest thing about the interview format and about podcasting in general is that it's always a positive sum game. Unlike traditional reporting or interviewing for like a news outlet or something like that, where there's a misalignment of incentives, right? In traditional reporting, there's a reporter, a journalist, someone like that who's doing an interview, and they're trying to get something out of the interview. They have an agenda, right? They have an editorial bias or an editorial agenda that they're trying to fulfill. They're doing it on behalf of some story. They're trying to take some angle on it. Even if they're just doing straight news, there's always going to be some kind of angle. And so the interviewer and the interviewee are actually misaligned in this classic scenario. And yet reporters go out all the time and get interviews with all kinds of people. And usually those interviews are given for free. And that's just standard practice in the world of news and commentary. And nobody thinks twice about it. Yet for individuals just trying to do podcasts, somehow there's this apprehension around asking someone for their time. But the cool thing is that as a podcaster, as someone who's not associated with a large legacy media company, you actually have better aligned incentives with the person that you're talking to than even a accredited, a glamorized reporter would. And the reason is because you have a vested interest in giving people a good interview, right? You're not really going to last long, especially if you're totally unknown. If you're talking to someone and it just ends up making them look bad, or it's just a gotcha or whatever. Now, obviously, there are some channels out there and people who specialize in kind of dramatic content or embarrassing content or whatever, and those people can go do that thing. But most podcasters are not in that kind of a game. They're in the game of providing knowledge or information or entertainment. And they're really trying to create good conversations. And that's really what I'm about. I've always, from the beginning, thought about it in this way where I'm trying to create a win-win scenario. And so the first thing you want to just sort of rewrite in your own head is that you're not just taking value from someone, but actually you're creating a win-win scenario for them, right? The next thing that I want to address is, so we've gotten out of the way why, why someone would give you their time. And of course, as your show grows and evolves, that trade-off is going to become even better. It's not just going to be them giving away their knowledge or experience or charisma or whatever it is for free, but actually it's going to be a cross-pollination event where if someone already has an audience of some kind or a following of some kind or some amount of notoriety, well, then exposing them to your audience is going to give them a boost because they're going to get to share their message. And it's also going to give you a boost because, of course, you're getting valuable content. And so the next objection is, how do I know that I'm going to have a good conversation? And to that, I would just say, you already know how to have a good conversation. You wouldn't be in this game. You wouldn't be thinking about or beginning to do a podcast if you weren't capable of having a good conversation. And if you're watching this, I assume that you have friends, family members, people that you talk to, people that you enjoy having conversations with. And so in a way, you already have this skill. You're just not totally aware of it because there are, of course, people that you talk to that you have great conversations with that you could talk to for hours on end and never get bored. And then there are other people that you interact with and you try talking to them a little bit and it just doesn't click. And that's just part of normal life. Now, obviously, as an interviewer, you want to develop this skill, this ability to be able to pull good conversations out of different kinds of people. But you already have the ability to do this. It's just what you're going to be doing over time is you're going to be expanding, you're going to be developing your range so that you could do this successfully with a broader range of people than you might be exposed to or interact with in your daily life. The good news is that given that you are presumably picking a subject area or a niche that you are already familiar with and have some enthusiasm about, it's likely that the people that you're going to be talking to also have some familiarity and some enthusiasm about that area. And so you're going to be more likely to click with them when you first start talking to them than you would with just some random stranger, right? Where you don't have a lot of context that's shared between you or mental similarity or whatever it may be. And so just get this out of your way already that you already know how to have a good conversation. You already know what that's like. You've already done that thousands of times in your lifetime, and doing this, over a Zoom call or inside of a studio or however you're going to facilitate the conversation is really no different than that. All right. So we've gotten the objections out of the way about, how do I make sure that I'm adding value, right? Remember, you're not taking, you're already adding. Even doing the interview is added value. We've already gotten rid of the objection of how do I know that I'm going to have a good conversation? Let's wind back to the question of who do I talk to? Because I already said, just reach out to people you know. You're like, okay, I can reach out to people I know, but if I don't already have a large network, a large following, I'm going to run out of names on that list pretty quickly. So the next stage in this is to start looking for subject matter experts. And in particular, again, this is going to be caveated by depending on what kind of show you're doing. But if you're doing anything at all that's scientific or academic in any sense, then a great group of people to reach out to, because of the fact that they're A, heavily available, and B, usually open to talking to the public, are academics, college professors, people that teach other people in their subject area for a living, and usually do so through an accredited university. And the reason is because these people, A, are easy to get a hold of. Almost always their emails are publicly available, even for academics at elite institutions, some of whom are very famous, go on very big podcasts. These professors, just as a matter of course, will usually have at least their email, often their email, their office address, even their entire CV available on a public website. And this is because these people are public educators. Their job is to educate not just the students who are paying tuition, but also the broader public. And this ties into the other reason why they make really good guests to reach out to. It's not just because you can find their contact information very easily, but also because when you go to contact them, they're very likely to say yes, especially if you demonstrate any kind of familiarity with their work already. And the reason is, again, because they're public educators. Their interest is in serving the public. They've chosen that as their life vocation, is to spread knowledge, right? To not only find the knowledge, do the research, teach the classes, but also spread it abroad. And so as a result of this, these people will often be more than willing to come on a show, even if they're totally unknown, even if it's a very small, if it's a very small show, because of the fact that that their job is literally to just teach people what they do. And the other thing about this is that often these people are subject matter experts, and they're often very specialized. As a result of this, if you show that you have some familiarity with the work already, or that you're at least enthusiastic about their work, learning about their work, then that's something that they, in many cases, rarely have an opportunity to espouse outside of their day-to-day jobs. And they'll usually be very excited to talk to you because they've actually found someone in the general public who's not just taking a class for some credits, that they can talk about their work. And these people are invested, their entire careers are invested in the perpetuation of the ideas that are embedded in their work, whether that's books or papers or lectures or whatever it is. These people are, privileged in that they have the opportunity to spend their lives perpetuating ideas that they think are important and that matter. And so usually they're enthusiastic about being able to share those ideas. So professors, academics, that's a group of people that you can begin to reach out to, again, depending on your subject matter, who are often going to be very easy to get a hold of and willing to come on your show. The next group of people that you want to reach out to are people that are in the same niche as you, but slightly bigger than yourself, right? So when I started out, I had in the hundreds of followers on Twitter, but I had a number of mutuals of people that followed me back that I followed, who were related to the content that I was making back on my old show back in the day, Agora Politics. Shout out to them. Who had, maybe a few thousand followers, right? And so these people aren't famous. They're not, they don't have any real name recognition outside of their niche little area. But a lot of these people were PhD students, or in some cases professors, or just, somewhat, sizable social media accounts. Maybe they've got 10,000 followers, and they're just like one or two orders of magnitude greater than I am, right? I've got, 500 followers, let's say, and they've got, 3,000 or 10,000. And so these people are big enough that if you have them on your show, that they have content that they want to talk about that clearly has some interest, but they're not so big that they're just getting hit up with offers all the time and they don't really have time for you. And so the next group of people you want to reach out to are these people that are slightly above you, that have a slightly bigger following, but are still very accessible. And then finally, of course, are the people who are the big hitters in your niche or area or industry, right? The people that are going on the big shows, that are going on the Lex Friedman podcast, maybe not Joe Rogan, because that's, that might be too big. But who are going on, the large shows, the shows that you are already listening to and watching on, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify or wherever, right? the sort of A-lister guests, maybe not totally A-list, but B and C list. Okay. Um, and the reason you want to reach out to these people is because oftentimes you have an assumption in your head that they don't want to talk to you because you're not famous, because you don't have a big show, because you don't have 100,000 or 1 million followers or whatever it is. But you'll be surprised how many people are willing to go on a show, in some cases, even a show that's totally unknown and unheard of, if you can present the right pitch. And so this is a group that you don't want to spend all of your time on because, again, it's a long shot, it's very low likelihood that they say yes. But every once in a while, for whatever reason, maybe they like you for some reason, maybe you give them the perfect pitch. Maybe they are looking to practice something that they're experimenting with, but they're not really ready for the big time. These people do occasionally say yes to very small opportunities, and it's really a personal decision. I've had people that are totally unknown themselves, that have very little following, who totally ignore me, or ask me even how many people listen to your show, like there's somebody. And then I've had larger guests, people that I thought I could never book, who ended up just saying yes, getting back to me right away and coming on the show, and we had a great conversation. So you really don't know ahead of time whether someone is going to be willing to come talk to you. And so you have to leave a little bit of a space, maybe 10% of your invites end up going out to these sort of long shot big hitters. Because otherwise, how else are you going to climb up? And also you just don't know who's going to say yes. So the next part of this is, how do you actually start reaching out to these people, right? And you kind of know the answers to this. I don't think I really need to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway so that you can just, don't have any excuses to not get started, which is you got to find their contact information. Now, the thing about this is that the more intimate or personal a contact that you have, the better, right? So if you already have their number, if they're already in your phone, if you already have some way to direct message them, then that's the best way to do it. If they're already following you, of course, even better. If you have a friend of a friend, right? If you have a friend that you can reach out through who already knows them and has some kind of relationship with them, then you should go do that. Outside of those sort of warm intro, people that you already know or already have contact with, or friends of friends methods, then of course the next thing to do is cold outreach. And through cold outreach, you're going to be looking at, can you reach out to them over X, Twitter? Can you reach out to them over email? I've had people before that I was able to reach out to over Instagram because their DMs were open. For different YouTubers, often you'll find their email, an email to contact sitting inside of their YouTube channel profile. And if none of those methods are totally available to you, then of course there are like paid services where you could try to get the contact information of these people, and you can use those. I haven't really used them. I try to do almost all of my outreach through publicly available email addresses that I could find, or through Twitter or through personal connections. And I found actually in the early days that Twitter worked really well. It's working less well these days because there's so many spam bots. But especially if you already have mutuals or you have shared mutuals with someone, I would say that X can be a great platform for getting started, especially because any topic that you're interested in, there's already a community there. I don't know too much about Instagram or Facebook or the other platforms. I tend to stay away from those, but you're going to do the same thing you do with any other kind of business transaction, which is you got to find a way to contact these people. And so you have the list of people. Make the list before you start doing any outreach. I would suggest actually trying to get as long of a list as possible, something like 50 names before you actually start doing any kind of outreach at all. So you don't just have to sit around and come up with new names every day. But get that list of people, try to get all of their contact information, and then, warm outreach if you can, cold outreach if you can. The thing about the pitches is that you want to keep your pitches very short and very simple. You don't want to say too much about yourself. You don't want to be overselling yourself. You don't want to be spending too much time going into depth about what you want to talk about or information about them. You want to keep these very brief, very short, and broadly, you want it to be something that they can read in under a minute. And the reason is because people don't got time. They don't really know who you are necessarily. They're not going to put any effort into reading it if they read it at all. And so you want to very quickly just get down to, here I am, here's my show, here's why I want to have you on. If you have any kind of social proof that's related to who you're talking to or what you're going to be talking about, like, oh, I talked to this and this person before, or I wrote this book, or I did this thing in the past that's related to what we're going to be discussing, then you want to maybe throw that in there. And then you just want to say, hey, if you're interested in talking, I'd love to chat sometimes. Please let me know. Thank you. That's it. Very simple, very straightforward. You just want enough information so that they know who you are, they know what they're signing up for, and maybe a little bit of social proof if you've got it. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Just leave that part out. And then a thank you, and then you just wait. You wait to see, right? And you'll be surprised at the people who say yes. All right. So I've explained kind of, and it's that simple. It's that simple, right? If they respond to you, then, you hopefully have some kind of booking service. I would suggest getting a calendar like Calendly or cal.com, so that you can just send them a link. You don't have to go back and forth, with 5 different messages to coordinate on the timing. But basically, have it set up so that you're ready to go, so that you know how you're going to talk to them, when you're going to talk to them, when you're available to talk, that is, and just let it go from there. So whether that's in person, right, or over Zoom or whatever video conferencing platform you're going to use, have the link ready to go, have the scheduling ready to go. And if they respond yes, or they're interested, or they have more questions or whatever, just, engage, get it out there, and you'll be surprised at how fast you can book your first guests. All right. So I promised you that I would tell you how I would get started today. My framework for how I started from the very beginning, and especially when I ended up doing my second show, I had this down. So the thing is that the most common issue with people starting out podcasting is that they quit too early. It's something crazy like 90% of podcasts or something like that. This is a statistic I remember years ago. It's probably different now. Don't even get past the 8th episode, right? So if you get past 8 episodes, you're actually already basically in the top 10%, right? Now, you're not in the top 10% of active shows, because all of those shows, basically become inactive and then die. But most people quit before they even get to 8 shows, right? And so the important thing isn't that you get your first show. Obviously, you need to get your first show to get started. The important thing is that you get your 8th show, and then your 10th show, and then your 20th show, and then you keep going, right? And so what you don't want to do is set yourself up into a scenario where you get started and then you do the show and then you lose momentum, right? And then you're back at square one. What you actually want to do is, before you ever publish your first episode, again, if you're starting a brand new show and you've never done it before, you want to actually get a backlog of interviews done before you even start, before you even publish your first episode, right? And so remember, I told you to get that list together first. I told you to get those 50 names. Well, the thing is that I don't just want you to get all those names out before you publish your first episode. I actually want you to get multiple interviews fully completed before you publish your first episode. And again, you're saying, well, like, how can I do that? People aren't going to know that I even have a show. It's going to look like I don't even exist, whatever. The thing is that people don't do a lot of due diligence on who you are, how many downloads you have, what kind of show they're going on, yada, yada, yada. Generally, they're going to take your word that you are presenting as who you say you are, that you're going to do the kind of show that you say you're going to do. And if you tell them that you're a newer show, they're just going to take it for what it is. And so what I would do, and what I did do for my second show, is I would get a backlog of at least 4, if not more, interviews out of the way and done, totally completed, booked, talked to, recorded, all the way through, before I even put out my first episode. And the reason you want to do this is, A, it's going to give you practice for doing the interviews, booking the interviews, finding the guests. before you have to, go make it big time and put out a show. The last thing you want to do is put out 1 or 2 shows and then totally disappear forever. And it's just an embarrassment and it's awkward and the weeks go on and you haven't done a 3rd show and people are wondering what you're doing and you said you were going to do it and now you look like a quitter, yada, yada, yada. So you don't want to deal with any of that. What you want to do is you want to reach out to enough people to get those first 4 or 5 shows done, get them totally recorded. That way, when you put out your first episode, you're already confident that there's going to be more content coming, right? Regardless of how well it goes, how many people download it, how good you think it is, et cetera, et cetera. For those first 4 or 5, days, weeks, whatever your schedule is, you've got content to put out and you're just going to keep putting out that content, right? And that'll do a few things. One, it will give you time to reconsider, okay, here's what went well. Here's what didn't go well. This guest that I talked to, yada, yada. We like that. We didn't like that. 2, it will provide you feedback. So as you put those shows out, you're going to be able to see, okay, this was received pretty well. This was not received very well. And 3, the most important thing is that we'll keep the momentum going. So you're not going to lose momentum. There's going to be this period where, I'm suddenly out of content. I put out my first show and now I don't have anything. I put out my second show and now I don't have anything. And you're not going to be in this perpetual cycle of needing to constantly renew things in this earliest stages. Because in this earliest stages, you have this little ember, this little spark, and you want to feed it and let it grow into a big flame so that the show continues on its own momentum. But first you got to get it rolling. And so what you want to do is record those first 4 or 5 shows in the beginning before you put anything out. And the last thing that it gives you is it gives you the ability to move things around, right? So if one show is more topical than another, or you end up landing a really big guest, let's say on your 4th interview, but the first 3, you were interviewing a bunch of nobodies or friends of yours or whatever, well, then maybe you want to actually move that 4th interview to the front. So you get a big splash in the beginning, you get a lot of hype, you get a lot of publicity, and then you can go and post those other shows later on. And so it gives you that flexibility as well, which is really nice to have. So that's how I would basically frame, getting started. And if you've made it this far in the video, I just want to encourage you to go ahead and get that first interview, those first several interviews out of the way. Because as I said in the beginning, doing an interview show can be one of the most rewarding and enriching experiences that you're going to have throughout your life. And if you do it well, and you really put in a good faith effort, then even if your show doesn't end up succeeding, and for many of you, it might, it's hard to do. It's a saturated field, but some of you, you're going to end up doing it. You're going to love it and you're going to keep doing it. And if you just keep doing it, you will eventually see the success that you're hoping for. But even if that doesn't happen, it's the relationships that you build, the skills and the confidence that you build along the way that's going to end up making it more than worth it for you. But you just got to get started. And so I hope this video has been helpful to you. And I hope you have success in your interviewing and podcasting journey. And thank you for watching.